My goodness, man. Feeling much better today, guys. I tell you what, this is my second attempt at the podcast for this week. I tried recording. Sorry, I've got a very itchy nose here. Don't want any boogies on camera. I tried recording the podcast on Saturday, and I did. I recorded something, and it will not be seen the light of day, guys. It was bad. It was very bad. I was feeling sick. Which I know I harp on this all the time. Not sick. I wasn't actually sick. I've switched over to the keto diet, and I was going through a bit of what they call the keto flu, which is when your body hates you, so it makes you feel sick because you don't have carbs and the other things that it enjoys and likes and is familiar with. Sorry, if you're watching the video, I'm just touching my nose, my eye. Got scratches all over the place. But yeah, get it round two. Trying it again. I'm feeling better today. I think I'm past the difficult portion of the keto transition. Oh man, I know I usually ramble on this podcast, and a lot of times that rambling's not very funny or entertaining, probably. But boy, was I struggling to think clearly. And it showed. And then also in the middle of the podcast, my alarm went off, which, funny enough, that's the first time it's ever happened while recording the pod. I'm surprised, first time. But I was not familiar with the fact that when an alarm goes off, your recording stops for the video. Probably should have checked to make sure that I didn't have some sort of alarm here in the next hour, but we'll find out. If there's a break in the video, then I messed up again. But yeah, doing it again, feeling much better today. It's oh man, I just took a shower. Took a cold shower, guys. I've got big news. I've got a lot of stuff to talk about this week, but I went ahead and made a purchase recently, and if I'm being honest, I'm very scared about it. I've been following, honestly, for a while. It's the cold shower things has been something that I'll do once in a blue moon. It's very difficult, even though it's not that cold. But I've been following all the health stuff, obviously with the diet stuff I'm doing and everything. I'm just trying to get to be the best optimal version of myself. And so I think adding in some cold therapy will be good for me. So what I did is I bought an ice bath. Okay, went on Amazon. I said, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, how did you get those big muscles? And he was like, building spaceships and taking ice baths. And I was like, all right, if Bezos says it, I'll do it. He didn't say that. Bezos is pretty ripped, though, for his age. Think he's on steroids? I don't know. Probably not. When you have $50 trillion, you can probably afford a couple good trainers to keep you motivated. Somebody who cooks your food that's delicious but also healthy. Anyways, got the ice bath. Cost me about $130 on Amazon. I forget the brand. There's a bunch of brands, but it's basically it's kind of like a kind of inflatable. I thought it was more inflatable, but you like inflate the top ring, and then the rest is kind of like this heavier duty material that like a thick tarp material that holds the water in, and then there's like very skinny PVC pipe type things that you put like 6 of those going around in a circle. And I filled it up yesterday, okay, 100 gallons. And boy, let me tell you what, I don't have a hose, so that was a process in itself. I had to find a trash can and then just fill it up and take that outside, and did that about 100 times. But checked the temperature this morning. I also got a little thermometer, a little turtle thermometer. It's a little floaty in the pool. Got a little turtle on top in case any kids want to jump in there, and they won't. I don't know why no kids are coming here. Don't worry about it. That was a weird tangent, but checked the thermometer this morning, 38 degrees. There's ice on the top. I had to break it. 38 degrees. Honestly, I'm I paid for it. I was like, you buy it, you're going to have to do it, okay? That's going to motivate you to do it. And I'm legitimately like scared. I'm going to need comics out there, anybody listening that's in Denver. If you want to join me to help motivate me more so, let me know. Come over. Let's do the ice bath together because honestly, I might need extra motivation to do it. I mean, I did a cold shower, and the cold shower is pretty tough, and that water is probably 50 to 60 degrees, and I do it for like 30 seconds to a minute. Also, not only that, I'm taking a hot shower first, and then I turn it to cold. So to go from hot to cold is much easier to just go like, all right, I'm just jumping into cold. So I'm a little worried about it, but I'm going to train up to it. I'm going to work up to it. Um, I'm going to do probably like a week of cold showers. And then maybe this weekend, I'll try to hop in for the first time. I'm taking my shoes off. I'm going to get comfortable here, guys. I feel like I'm leaning back a lot on the video. I'm going to get up a little bit straighter here. But yeah, I'm excited to see how that works out. I guess here in Colorado, obviously, the thing that's tough with it when you don't have $10,000 to spend for like a regulated ice bath, because that's what a lot of people are doing. They're buying these, you know, 4, 5, 10 grand ice baths that you can set the temperature, and be like, all right, I want it to be 40 degrees, 45, 50 degrees, whatever, which would be a lot easier for me starting out because I could obviously do it at a higher temperature and then acclimate myself and then go lower from there. But because I'm not Jeff Bezos, okay, I don't have $10,000 ice plunge money. Also, I have like a little patio I don't even have barely room so I got a little small one. And so with that, it is the temperature that it is. So it's cold outside now, which is good in the sense that it keeps the water cold, but also it stinks because you get cold and then you get out and you're in cold weather. But also it stinks in the sense that once it gets warmer, the water, I guess I can, buy ice and stuff, but I don't know how much, if it's like a 80-degree day, if you can put a bunch of ice in there and get it down to like 40 degrees, or if that hot water will just melt all that ice and it'll be like, all right, it's 60 degrees now. I don't know. We'll find out, guys. I'll keep you updated on it. I'm looking forward to it. If you guys have done the ice bath stuff before, let me know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I genuinely am scared. I feel like I'm a very mentally um I I, I think of myself as a mentally tough person, dealing with adversity and you know, figuring things out and just dealing with stuff through your life, whatever it is, just having to be tough. That's part of what life is just dealing with stuff. But I will say my body does not deal with cold well at all. Like laughably bad. I remember when I was lifeguarding, I think I was like 22. It was just after college. I was just out of college. I was lifeguarding and I was also giving swim lessons as well. And it was at a YMCA in Bedford, Virginia, and it's an indoor pool, okay? So pool temperatures usually are 80 to 82 degrees. That's where I like 82. I used to be on the swim team too, and jumping into water when it was 80 versus 82, it was a cold beginning. That's another thing. I would go to swim practice and for like 10 minutes I'd just stand on the edge of the pool being like, you have to jump in. I don't want to jump in, but you have to jump. I don't want to do it though. That's probably why I never got that good at swimming, because I was just on the edge of the pool, not even practicing. But with that said, when I was doing the lifeguarding and swim lessons, there was a period of about maybe like 2 weeks plus where the indoor heating system, or like the heating pump, whatever it's called for the pool, it broke. So the water temperature fell down to Um, 76, which is hilarious that I'm sick because that doesn't even sound that cold. I mean, I was ready to quit my job. I was like, this is torture. I'm getting paid $7.35 to literally hate my life. And look, you can laugh at that. It is laughable that I was that cold. But to be fair, if you're not familiar with water temperatures and what that feels like, kids that I was teaching in the swim team they're like toddlers. They were literally, their parents were taking them out of the pool and they were not doing lessons. So like it was cold enough to where kids were just like, I'm not doing it. And the thing that stunk for me is I'm not like moving around. I'm not getting in and able to like exercise and kind of heat my body up. I'm like standing there in the water, like swim to me. I'm like not moving at all. Uh, so that's, I mean, the fact that I struggled in that was 76. Now we're talking about 38 that I saw in the ice bath. That's one other instance in my life where I remember dealing with very cold water and it did not go well was in Tennessee. This was in 2003, roughly, if I'm guesstimating correctly. 2002, 2003 time period. I was on the cross country team. We did a like an invitational, some sort of meet, some sort of multi-team invitational, I guess it's called in running. It's not called a tournament. Invitational, and we went out to Tennessee, and the race was like right by a dam. So it was like right by a dam that had whatever the dam runoff, a river, or not a river, whatever you call it. I mean, it was probably like 50 yards plus wide, so it wasn't like a little stream, but whatever the runoff of a dam is called, ran right beside the course. So after a lot of people finished, they were like, it was August, so it was very hot. People were getting in the water. And I did the same thing. And I don't know if you've ever experienced dam runoff water. I don't know if it was just this place or this is what all of them are like, but it was so cold. There was a cone that was like at the bottom of the water, right off of like you could see it from the land area, and a lot of people were like jumping in and trying to go down and touch the cone. I remember I literally got in, and as soon as I got my head under to like swim down to it, I came back. It was like my body. It was the biggest shock I've probably ever experienced with cold, and my body immediately was like, "Oh, get out! You cannot do that." And that was probably, I don't know. I guarantee you it wasn't 38 degrees. It was probably 45, 50 if I had to guess. I have no idea, but I doubt that it was as cold as this ice bath is going to be. And so I'm really dreading. I'm excited to try it out, but I'm also like, cuz I really want to do it, and everything in my head is like, is my body going to allow me to do it? And I know everybody talks about like the initial shock and how that's just part of it and you have to like get past that. But I have zero. I'm a very skinny boy, okay? I don't like cold. My body does not like cold. So we'll find out how that goes. I'll let you guys know next week. But also funny continuation of that story with the cross country team in Tennessee. That was the weekend that I got my high school nickname, Fetus, which, if I'm being honest, I was not a fan of. Did not like that at all. That stuck. Somebody called me that at the Invitational. We stayed in like a church and just slept on the floor of like this big open room. I think everybody just brought like sleeping bags, and there's just like 80 kids just like on the floor. And that's where I got the old nickname Fetus. Was not a fan. I've tried to make a joke about that. Never figured it out. Maybe I'll look back into it. But when I first started comedy, I had I'll call it material about I won't even call it a joke. I had memorized words that referenced my nickname Fetus, which was my high school nickname, which was worse than my middle school nickname, which was Simon Birch, which was a little person on a movie called Simon Birch. Was not a fan of those. But you know what? I'm a grown-up boy now, and I'm a regular-sized human being, height-wise, okay? I'm probably a little thinner than most, but I'm working on it, guys. I'm trying to eat. It's hard to gain weight when you're going keto and you have acid reflux and you're dealing with all this malarkey. But that's where we're at, guys. It's like I said, I was trying to record the podcast on Saturday, and I was just not feeling it. Like I said, I felt like I had the keto flu. Like I felt not well, and it was interesting because as I was talking on the podcast, then I was kind of going through the creative process and how I felt a couple weeks ago. I felt very good. I felt momentum going in the right direction. Not just in the right direction, but it's like, all right, I'm in a good spot. I'd had a week or two of like solid shows where every single show, like 8 shows in a row, were like great. And I felt in control and funny and energetic and charismatic. And I was like, I've got it all figured out. Okay. Got my diet, my energy levels, my mentals in check. And this last week or so, I've felt kind of like I had like this low grade flu from switching over to the keto diet. And that's what I was talking about, is the creative process and how there's so many ups and downs, and how you literally, you're only, I feel like your mindset is you're only as good as your last performance, which a lot of people talk about. That's like a saying that people say for a lot of stuff, but it really is true with comedy, where you can be on top of the world, you're crushing, you're doing great, you're like, I'm like pretty good at this. And then you have like one bad set and you're like, I don't know if I know how to do comedy anymore. And not only that, it wasn't even that I didn't even have any shows this last week where I was like bad. It was more so just I felt mentally fatigued and tired and unwell. So I wasn't writing, or I was trying to write, but I haven't written anything great in a week or two. And so I didn't feel creative, and I felt sick on top of that. So then I was like, just existential stuff where you're like, dude, it's fine. But that's also the interesting thing about when you get sick. I mean, quote unquote sick from things like switching diets, which it's not truly sick. You feel sick, but it's more so like withdrawals, or your body's like transitioning, so you just don't feel great. But the difference is, because you're not technically sick, you're still working, you're still operating normally. You're just not feeling well. So it's easy to like judge things incorrectly, aka like my comedy creativity and other stuff, where I'm like, I'm not funny anymore. When if I had the regular flu and I was just laid out, I'd be like, okay, maybe I'm having negative mental thoughts, but that's because I'm sick. So I'm not gonna like, I'm gonna wait till I get better before I judge my comedy career. But because of the fact that I was still operating normally with the keto flu, it was easy. My brain just like forgot. And so I was like, man, I just don't feel creative. And it's like, yeah, it took me like a week to be like, yeah, no, duh. You're kind of not feeling great right now. Just like let your body readjust. But yeah, that is an interesting part of the creative process, where it's very well known. Everybody talks about it, how it's like, look, you're going to go through ruts and you just got to keep at it, and you will find, like, if you keep working at it, you will create new material. You will come up with new jokes. Every comic I've ever listened to talk about comedy says the same thing. They put out like an album, They put out an hour or something like that. And then when they have to start over, they're like, will I be able to write another joke? And it truly is like a thing that we all feel. And even though you know that, and even though we've all gone through the process of like, all right, can I do it? And then you just keep at it, and then you do it. You write new stuff. So you're like, yeah, that's just part of the process. But when you're in that rut, you're like, but maybe this is the time that it doesn't come back. It's a very humbling thing, and I appreciate it very much. It's just part of the creative process, and as frustrating as it can be, it's also just part of the process, and part of the fun too, where you're like, you have to train yourself to be disciplined and just realize that, hey, even though I'm not feeling creative now, just keep writing, and you'll find it eventually. But what some people do, and what I've done, maybe occasionally in the past, at least in short stints, where you're like, oh, I don't feel creative or whatever, and then you just like take time off, and you're like, well, if I'm not writing at all, if I'm not trying to be creative, even if I don't feel creative, then yeah, it's not going to come back because I'm not even doing it. So, but I feel good, man. After that cold shower, the cold showers, as they say, it gives you like a boost of, you just kind of shocks the system a little bit, a little extra dopamine. And I'm curious to see what that ice bath dopamine rush is like. Well, yeah, we'll see. But in other news, guys, there's snow on the ground. Shocker, February and in Colorado, snow here. It started to snow when I was recording the podcast originally on Saturday. I was recording early in the morning, which was also funny. I got up early to record the podcast because I was like, I have to do the podcast. I have to go for a long run. I have to write. I have to read. I have to go grocery shopping. I was going to do another podcast with a buddy, and I literally recorded the podcast, which, as I mentioned, I will not be putting out, and I did none of that other stuff. And one of the big things that I wanted to do was a long run, and I was feeling very crummy because of the keto switchover. But also, it started to snow, so it was a good excuse for me to be like, "Oh, I can't," because it was raining in the morning, which then switched to snow. It was very heavy snow. I didn't even know it was going to be snowing. Typical Colorado again. I'm like unaware that they're calling for snow, and then we got like 8 inches of snow. And I had a show that night, and I was worried it would get canceled, but actually, because it was like a wet rain and it wasn't that, it was like 35 degrees. It wasn't that cold. The roads themselves were just kind of wet. Whereas, like in the parking lot where I'm at, I mean, you're talking about 6 to 8 inches, but on the road, I guess whether they plowed some or just because of the traffic and people driving on it, it just didn't accumulate and wasn't much of an issue, so that wasn't too bad. But I did a show Saturday night at a brewery. It was a rotating tap show at Barkentine Brewery in the Edgewater Public Market in Denver. Cool little spot. I got there. I was hosting the show. It was a fun show. Good crowd. With the snow and stuff. Was wondering if people wouldn't show up. They said it's usually completely full, which is probably 100 plus people. But there's probably like 75 people. Like, it was mostly full, and the people there, it's a free show, and it's in a market, so that it's like a brewery that's inside a bigger marketplace that has a bunch of other vendors and stuff. So people are kind of walking in and out. So you're wondering like, hey, is this going to be chaotic? Or people going to be listening? Are people going to be, coming in and coming out from the marketplace itself and being chaotic, which causes people to lose attention? But it was none of that. It was great. People were there. The setup was good. They turned the lights down. Everybody was there watching, laughing, having a good time. So it was fun. That was the only show I did last week, and probably for the best, like I said, because I've been very busy, which has been good, and I would have loved to do more shows, but because last week was so like low energy for me with the diet switchover, I it was good to have some rest, especially for hosting. Like I felt fine, but also I felt like a little lethargic. And when you're hosting, if you're like feeling low energy, you want to be, like, come on guys, what's going on? What's up? You want to be like WWF, WWE. I didn't watch wrestling, so you want to be, you want to hype people up is what you want to do. You want to be Bruce Buffer. But it was funny because uh, while I was there, there were multiple people that asked to be on the show, just like people that were there, just in the audience as I was setting up, which I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often because I host quite a bit, and a lot of people are just like oblivious to what comedy is, and they're just like, "Oh, I want to be on the show. Can I do the show?" When in reality, it's like, "Oh no, this is like a professionally put together show, and the 5 people on it are like have been doing comedy for, yeah, if I look at the lineup, literally everybody had been on the lineup had been doing comedy for 5 to 15 years individually. So like combined, like 50 years. And, they've been working at it every night for the last X amount of years they've been doing it. Uh, one of them's like a tour, like 2 of them were like a touring professional. Another one was visiting from Virginia. And to just be like somebody in the audience who's like, hey, can I like try comedy for the first time tonight? Is just like such a wild thing. I mean, I get it. I was talking to some of the comics uh, after the people approached me. I was talking to some of the comics about it and how it's like kind of crazy that people would do that. But I also understand it because if you don't do comedy, you don't you don't know, you don't understand the behind the scenes like time and effort that comics are putting in to develop an act, to put together 10 plus minutes of jokes. It's not just like, hey, I've got like a couple stories that like a couple of my friends have told me are funny. Like, let me go say that in front of people. Because first off, and I say this not to be critical, I say this because this was me in the beginning. This is most comics in the beginning. When you first start, you just go, I'll tell some stories that people have told me were funny. My friends have told me this is funny. And I I will tell you what, they're not. You get on stage in a stand-up format and you realize real quick, you go, oh, these don't have punchlines. You have to have punchlines. So it takes a long time to learn how to do punchlines, let alone punchlines in a story context. Those stories are very difficult. But not only that, oh, cool. You have some stories that you've told friends in the comfort of your own home when you are like feeling totally accepted and safe and in conversation with 2 people or whatever. You're like, that's very different than getting in front of 75 to 100 people and then being like, oh, I need to say this in a fluid way that has punchlines and say it in a confident way so I don't look awkward up here and lose people's attention. Like, it's a totally different thing. And again, I say that because when I first started, I did not know. I was just like, oh, I'm probably going to be like discovered right away and people are going to be like, this guy's hilarious. Let's make him famous. That's not what it is at all. I mean, there's a bunch of skill sets you have to pick up, and you only pick those up through experience and just by doing it, by failing a lot. But yeah, one person asked, the second person who asked, it was funny because we were in the green room area and these 2 guys come up and they come to me and they go, hey, is this a comedy show? And I was like, yeah. And the guy said, is it an open mic or is it a show? And I said, oh, it's a show. And he goes, oh, well, like I'm in town from Boston. I'm a comedian. And look, I don't say this, I'm not saying this to be mean, but also I'm just saying it how it is, okay? The way he approached me and the way he asked me, I don't know if I did it justice in my explanation to you guys here, but the way that he approached me, it was very obvious that he probably had been doing comedy for a couple months at the most. Like, because he didn't full blown ask, but he was kind of insinuating like, "Can I do the show?" And again, just the way he approached me and everything like that, it made me understand immediately that he hasn't been doing comedy long enough to understand that you don't just hop on a show um like that. And if you do, I mean, there are circumstances where maybe you would, but those are different. That's somebody coming up, and honestly, it's tough to tell because it was kind of some intangibles. Is that the way to say it? It was the vibe he gave off. The vibe he gave off was very much like, I'm brand new. Can I do the show? Versus I've had people before where they come up, like I was doing a show on the road one time, and a guy came up, and he actually he also didn't explain, which is kind of crazy. So this isn't the best example, but this guy ultimately did the show. He has a dry bar special. He has a late night credit. Like he's been doing comedy for like 20 plus years. And he did very well. And so people, like, if you've done comedy for long enough and you come up and you're like, "Hey," what you would do is you wouldn't ask and kind of just be like, "Can I do the show?" You would maybe like give your credentials a little bit, being like, "Hey, I'm from out of town. I've been doing comedy for, X amount of years. You basically would establish that you're a competent comedian, and then be like, if you have room for a guest spot, I'd love to do the show." You wouldn't just be like, "Hey, can I like do the show?" Anyways, he came up, and it was, again, the vibe was very much like he has just barely done comedy. And he came up with his friend. I guess his friend lived in Denver, and the other guy was visiting from Boston. And his friend goes, his jokes, his Boston jokes will do very well here in Denver. Which also, like, that's a verbatim what he said. Which also was like a clear indication. I'm like, oh, this guy's brand new, and you are not going to be on the show. It was fun. I mean, also I had already, maybe I hadn't yet. Ultimately, I gave out a guest spot, but it might have been after. But it was to a veteran comedian who knows what he's doing. So it's like, happy to have someone like that stop by and be like, "Yeah, you can do 5 minutes. You're a competent human being. You're a competent comedian that is not going to ruin the show from the get go." But that is very funny. I mean, I remember when I first started. This is the thing too. You learn very quickly if you're doing comedy for real. If you're going out to a lot of open mics, even it takes you like less than a month to understand kind of general etiquette. Like, genuinely, I remember my third open mic ever. My third open mic was at a place called Nicolai's Pizza on 13th and Downing, if I remember correctly. It has since gone out of business. And it was an open mic. It was Saturday. It was from like 7 to 11:30. And again, it was my third open mic. You go sign up, and every open mic is run differently. Some hosts go list order. Some hosts will put their friends up first. Some will put just better comics up first. Some will do a little bit of both. Some are a bucket pull where you put the names in there and you just pull out randomly. But I was waiting for a long time. I wasn't signed up first or anything, but it was just really late. It was getting late. And I saw a couple other comedians go up to the host and kind of like look at the list. And what I assumed they were doing was asking them when they were going up. So I was like, well, maybe that's what I have to do to get up. I have to go be like, "Hello, when am I going up?" And I did that. And I realized in that moment that, like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, the look he gave me, it wasn't just that. Like, I realized, like, oh, he's got 50 people on the list, and everybody wants to go up. And this is my third open mic ever. Like, who am I? I'm going last, and I should be going last. And then you also, like, if you do open mics and stuff for a while, you learn, people will say it verbatim. Like open mic hosts, they're like, hey, if you come and ask me when you're going to go up, you're going to go last. Because guess what? Everybody wants to go up. So when every person comes up and they're like, hey, man, I need to get up because I need to go home and go to bed. So because I have to work tomorrow. And you're like, hey, guess what? 66 other comics also have to go to bed and get up for work. You're brand new. Who are you? Your jokes probably stink, and you're probably going to say something very offensive. You're not going up soon. So that's a little different from the guy approaching me, but I did think it was kind of funny. Again, because I think it's funny. I think it's funny because I can relate to it. I probably would have done a similar thing if I was very new, and I had something that I was gonna say, like, I had no idea when I was gonna do my first open mic. The first one I ever signed up for was in 2011, which was 7 years before I ultimately tried comedy for the first time. But it was at the Funny Bone in Richmond, Virginia, and I stopped by there, and I went to like the box office, and I was like, hello, I would like to do the open mic tonight. And they were like, yeah, they gave me like 30 physical tickets, and they're like, give these out to all your friends and family and people that might come to the show. Tell them to write your name on the back of it. And when you come here, you might go up. It depends on whoever has the most people come, like the 10 comics with the most people that they bring get to go up, which is called a bringer show. And I mean, I wasn't even from Richmond. I was meeting with my ex-girlfriend at the time. We had broken up, and I was desperately trying to get back together with her. I was going through my Lyme disease phase, and I was a real sad boy, real pathetic human being, real broken, real embarrassing time frame. I remember I wrote a letter. We broke up, and I bought her Harry Potter, the collection of DVDs, and I wrote a letter. And ultimately never sent it to her. And then when I was cleaning my closet out, like years later, when I was moving, I read the letter, and it was so cringe. I'm sure I threw it away, but I almost, just for comedic value, wish I had it to be able to read, to be like, this. I wrote this and was going to send this to a human being. It's basically just like tears in a Hallmark card. Just like, please take me back. Just embarrassing. But I met her. She lived in Virginia Beach area, and so Richmond was kind of like a halfway point. And we were cordial, still friend. We had broken up, and in my head, I was like, "We're gonna get back together." Or I wasn't confident about it, but I was like, "We have to get back together." And I didn't realize until later she was very much like, "We're not getting back together, but I'll be your friend to help you through your little sad boy time." And so we met there, and she went with me to sign up, and I was just like, yeah, because I was also going home that day. She had to drive a couple hours home that day. I knew nobody, so I ultimately didn't do it. But my point is, before you start comedy, you have no idea. You have no idea. I mean, there's so many misconceptions. People just think like, oh, I can just go be funny. Like, maybe you see a comedian who doesn't do well, which there's plenty of. And look, sometimes there are comedians that are bad enough to where maybe you would do better. Okay, but that's kind of the exception. That's not the general rule of thumb. Because at the end of the day, a lot of comics that are going up have been on stage hundreds, if not thousands of times, like working out stuff and putting a lot of effort towards like saying the specific words to make crowds laugh. And yeah, so I think a common misconception is just like, that person stinks. I can do better than that. Which if you're an open mic, again, that might be the case. But if it's like a show, people will stoop. That's another misconception. Is that you watch and I'll do this. Everybody, it's just judgment is what it's called. But you watch somebody one time, maybe it doesn't go great, and you just go, that comic stinks. They're terrible. But maybe it's a great comedian and they had a bad night. Or maybe not only that, maybe it was just a bad show. That's another thing that can be funny where we do, bad shows all the time. But before you get like really big, you're going to do bad shows some at the very least. And I mean, where I'm at, it's like I'm going to do bad shows all the time. Where maybe it's, maybe there's nobody in the audience. Maybe there's 2 people. Maybe there's 4 people. And maybe those people didn't even know comedy was happening. Okay? So you can go up there with like the best jokes ever, and then from an audience member's point of view, they go, "Wow, you stink. That nobody laughed. That was horrible." But they're judging that like against a theater show from a special from a comedian they saw on Netflix that's crushing. And it's like, yeah, if they were here in this empty bar doing that same material that crushed on their Netflix special, it would also be bombing. Uh, so it's funny how that's kind of a misconception. I don't know why. I'm just like, I'm doing all these misconceptions to like defend comedy. It's like, if you've ever seen me bomb, okay, it's not because I stink. All right, it's because you don't know what you're talking about. And I probably had like an off night and there was probably nobody in the crowd and I'm really funny. That's what I was just rambling. It's funny when you like ramble, like I said on the podcast, it's just like ramble. And then you're like 5 minutes into a rant and you're like, I think I'm coming off very much like defensive about like me stinking as a comedian, which was not my intention, but also, if I can clear that up, that I don't totally stink, that wouldn't be bad. But rant over. I've been trying to do the reels, guys. Been trying. I got one locked and loaded for this week. Waiting to get. I got a couple videos from the Comedy Fort, which is the comedy club up there. I did a couple weeks ago, and I'm hoping to get those soon. Because I've got multiple clips that I want to pull out of there that were jokes that went really well, and it'll be like good quality stuff. So I'm hoping to get that sooner rather than later. But I've got a clip for this week about skiing that will be out by the time this is out. So go check it out if you haven't already. Give it a share. Share it on Instagram. If you could do me a solid, share it to all your friends. Okay? I take a real divisive stance against skiing, and you know what? I'm gonna post it as a divisive clip. I'm gonna try to get people angry. If I can't get views with just good old fashioned jokes, maybe I can get views by riling people up. I'm gonna rile you up. Okay, so check it out. It's not, I think it's a new joke and it's nothing incredible. But I do think that a lot of people ski, especially in Colorado, and maybe it will get some traction. Probably won't. It'll probably be my lowest viewed reel ever. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't understand. Nobody knows the algorithm. I'll tell you this. I posted, here's my reel breakdown for everything because I've been doing Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Not on TikTok. TikTok. I refuse to do TikTok. But Instagram, the two reels I put out, got 5,000, then 4,000 for the second one. Facebook, I got 14,000 for the first one, 27,000 for the second one. So not bad, but also, when people are like, "Ooh, I got 20,000 views or whatever," I mean, compared to people getting tens of millions, it's like okay, 27,000, like that's whatever. And then YouTube, I think I got 6,000 views on the first one, and then the second one I got 3 views. 3. Not 1,000, not 100. 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So few that I deleted it. I was like, maybe somebody said maybe you got. Somebody told me sometimes it just like gets stuck and doesn't like get out there. So just delete it and then re-upload it. So I got 3, deleted it, uploaded it again, 1 view. Honestly, pretty sure all those views were just me watching it. So I don't know what that means. Not too worried about it, but also I'm hoping that every one I post from now on isn't like 1 view. That would be silly. But we'll find out. And we're getting at the end here, guys. I'm gonna tie it down. I'm not gonna tie it down. I'm gonna land the plane. My brain feels better, but I'm also still stupid. I was talking to a friend about that. I was like, I recorded the podcast and I just felt too stupid. He's like, you're always stupid. I'm like, yeah, but stupider than usual. So stupider than stupid is real stupid. That's not, nobody wants to listen to that. But I'm thinking about, I'm going to have a podcast come out in maybe 2 weeks, I think, with good buddy Ed Bell, fellow comedian, just recorded an album. And we're going to talk through just the album recording, all the behind the scenes stuff. I think it'll be really interesting, especially if you're a comic and you're thinking about recording an album, like what equipment is used, the process, the venue, just how he felt, the joke order, everything like that, how he's going to distribute it. And I think I'm going to try to do maybe an album series where I interview comics who have recorded an album or special and just talk through all that stuff, get the behind the scenes stuff about how they did it to give you all, the audience, an idea if you're thinking about recording one, how you might be able to go about it, how much it might cost, things like that. But also if you're not a comic, I don't know if it'll be interesting, but I think it could still be interesting to just hear, again, all the behind the scenes stuff that goes into creating content in a professional setting. So I'm excited to do that. That'll come out in a couple weeks. But I'm going to end it there, guys. Appreciate you guys listening this week, and I'll see you guys again next week.